Hey guys, welcome back to PlayStation Live from E3. We're joined by two great folks, the first of which is our new host. Welcome, Zach Miner.
Oh, hello, Sid. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. And of course, we've got one Harvey Smith from Arcane Studios, whose work Zach and I both really appreciate. You've worked on some incredible games over the years. Deus Ex, Dishonored, Dishonored 2, and now Dishonored, Death of the Outsider. So we're here to talk a little bit about that. That's sort of the next experience in Dishonored 2. So no spoilers, but based on the title, well, I don't know. Tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, so Dishonored, Death of the Outsider features one protagonist, Billy Lurk, who's kind of a fan favorite. She first showed up in the Knife of Dunwall expansion for Dishonored 1 and the Brigmore Witches. And she was part of the crew that killed Jessamine Caldwin back in the day, the assassination that the whole series hinges around right now. And so you get to play as Billy. It's months after Dishonored 2. She's seeking her old mentor, the assassin Dowd, and that's the gist of the story.
Now, this is Billy Lurk, a.k.a. Megan Foster, the badass one-armed ship captain from Dishonored 2, right? So are we going to be visiting any of the kind of people or places from Dishonored 2 in this?
I feel bad because that's a spoiler for people that have not played Dishonored 2 yet. But,
well,
you've had months to play the game.
Yeah, come on.
Anyway, yeah, so during Dishonored 2, she exists under an assumed name. She's the captain of the Dreadful Whale, and she seems like a lost character. In Dishonored Death of the Outsider, she's really found her footing. She has purpose again. She and Dowd conceived this plan to kill this godlike figure that they see as responsible for so much misery in the world. Now, in answer to your question, you do revisit some spots in Karnaca, but there are also new locations. And there are some locations that are revisited but have changed heavily also. Dowd is kind of an older figure in this game. He's near the end of his life. It's 15 years later. And Billy is the protagonist, as I said. It's a standalone. That's right. One important feature about it. You don't have to have Dishonored 1 or Dishonored 2 in order to play Death of the Outsider.
That's a bit of a trend we're seeing these days, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, but it leads to all kinds of fascinating stuff. Like, what if this was someone's entry point to the Dishonored series?
Yeah.
They never played any of it, and they go out and they play Billy Lurk. It's a standalone adventure. It's a little shorter than a full release. It's priced at $29.99. But it is conceivable that some people will pick it up, and it'll be the first time they played a Dishonored game. Badass supernatural assassin, sneaking or killing, jumping rooftop to rooftop, using magic and weapons to take down like corrupt aristocratic faction leaders.
Now, the Outsider, clearly a very powerful and central figure in the entire Dishonored series here. So give folks who may not know what the Outsider is, just a quick intro, kind of what he represents to the series.
Yeah, what we know about the Outsider so far is that in our alt reality, the Empire of the Isles, there's no concept of Earth-like gods. There's just this figure who's been around for 4,000 years. We say that the cosmos always hungers for some divinity. So even if that god figure was destroyed or whatever, eventually a new one would be born, and it'd take a different form every time. And so the Outsider exists for the last 4,000 years. We know from the past games that it was originally a young man who was sacrificed by a cult to take on this role as this divinity. And he offers people enormous power and then watches what they do with them. He doesn't, some people see him as a corrupter, some people see him as a figure of evil, but really he offers people power and then kind of cynically expects them to abuse others with that power. But he's pleasantly surprised when they don't, as you saw if you played the low chaos version of Dishonored 1 or Dishonored 2. But he's an interesting figure, and Dowd and Billy conclude that much of the havoc that is wreaked in the world comes about because of the power that the Outsider offers people. So they decide to give their lives meaning, and to make up for the bad things they've done, they decide to try to take him out, which seems like an impossible task. Like, how do you kill a god?
Right. Now, one of the core tenets of the Dishonored franchise is that you want to give players the choice of kind of how they complete objectives, right? And even going so far as my personal favorite, the no pacifist run, or the pacifist run, no death run.
Yeah.
So death is right there in the name of the game, Harvey. So is there going to be some potential ways around that, or?
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's a tenet of the game, like you said. You can either play super stealthy, merciful, as we say, and not hurt or fight anyone, or you can go completely wild and conclude that no one is innocent, and take your enemies down in all kinds of brutal ways. That said, even with the critical assassination targets, we always provide an alternate non-lethal solution. So you can expect, without going into spoilers, you can expect some tricky intricacies in how you can deal with the outsider.
Sure. Now, since this takes place after Dishonored 2, I'm assuming this meant that you and the team had to choose a ending that is kind of canon. How challenging is that for you as designers? Because obviously player choice is like such a huge part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen player feedback online where people have concluded the wrong thing, like they assume we're doing this or that. What we very often do is we choose subject matter or stories or characters that are not gated on what the previous choices were. So we just kind of avoid the issue in some cases. In other cases, we decide, no, this was true or that was true. And there's some wrinkles to Billy Lurk's character. She can be changed heavily in Dishonored 2 by Emily Caldwin's actions. Emily can change time in a way. And so Billy is one of those rare characters that exists in one state, but also kind of in another state. She both should be this and should be that, or should be neither. And therefore, there's kind of disruption around her in time. And so the outsider does not mark her, but shows up and explains some of those things. And you'll see more by playing, but it's not everything people are assuming right now.
Okay, so in the kind of brief trailer that we're looking at right now, we got a little taste of potentially, some of the abilities and, weapons at her disposal. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you just saw Void Strike, which is she can charge up and deliver a really powerful attack. She has an arm made up of chunks of the Void. She has the sword that was originally used to sacrifice the outsider. She can construct it and deconstruct it, as you see here. And then also she can leave behind markers and teleport to them. It's different than Blink. It's called Displace, and that's what we just demonstrated there. It effectively allows her to move through walls back to a place where she was before.
Now, does the outsider know that Billy's coming, and what steps is he taking to prepare for that?
Well, I don't want to spoil too much of the story,
sure.
But there are some directions along those lines related to the outsider's character and how he feels about the whole thing. So I think you touched upon an interesting point for sure.
Yeah.
That players are going to discover as they go through the game.
The other question I got is, the outsider is sort of one with the Void. How would you describe the Void in Dishonored?
Yeah, we see the Void as this eternal thing that's almost a conscious...
like a primal energy or something.
Yeah, exactly, a primal entity or energy. And it always has some manifestation. Like we hint that in the past there were other godlike figures that would emerge and then be destroyed or eventually fall apart or whatever. In fact, Billy has a thing in her eye that leads to one of her powers called Foresight. I don't think we've talked about that yet. She has a unique power called Foresight. And it's because she has the red glowing thing in her eye is called the Sliver of the Eye. And it's from a giant chunk of a piece of the original, of the god that came before the outsider.
Oh, interesting.
The Eye of the Dead God, people call it. And it's part of the fiction of the death of the outsider. So she has a sliver of that in her eye, and it gives her the power of Foresight. So yeah.
So if Billy is successful in her quest, and we won't get into whether she is or not, but if she is, it would seem, given the outsider status with the Void and the Void's importance in the larger universe, it's going to have massive ramifications for this world that we're in.
That's what we think. The world of the Dishonored series, one way or the other, will experience a pretty catastrophic change going forward. Though it's interesting because Billy's powers are all tied to artifacts that are linked to the Void. She doesn't have the mark of the outsider, so presumably in a world without an outsider, she would still have some sort of link to the Void, to the energies of the Void.
But change isn't always such a bad thing, and I love your work so much because it's so thoughtful. Like the themes that you deal with in a lot of your games, Deus Ex is really big on this, Dishonored's big on it as well. Change can be horrific and cataclysmic, but it can also bring about kind of a rebirth as well.
I agree, and it's really refreshing creatively. Like, we've worked on the Dishonored games for 8 years now, and there's always some new thing to turn over based on what the team is talking about internally. And I always have to say this, and I'm not just saying this like everyone does, but like, our team is such a driving creative force behind all of this. The people in Lyon, France, some of the people in Austin, Texas on Dishonored 1 and Prey, but Lyon did Death of the Outsider and Dishonored 2. And those guys are so talented and so driven and turning over every stone and considering it, you know. Many of the best ideas, many of the directions, many of the powerful themes, they come from the interaction of this team, not just the narrative team or the level design team or the art team, but even programmers on the team that are prototyping powers and talking about what it means, doing something like the rat swarm behavior, you know, it leads to an idea or whatever. Billy Lurk carries a talisman called Rat Whispers that allows her, given to her by her childhood friend Deirdre, as a part of her backfiction, was killed by the brother of the Duke of Serkonos, if you want to get really nerdy and into the lore details.
And anyway, I do.
Yeah, Billy carries this talisman called Rat Whispers that allows her to listen to swarms of rats or individual rats and get secrets about what they've seen. Often it's just details like a rat might see, translated into something she can hear, but sometimes it's very useful about what's going on in the world. And so, you know, that's a good example of like one idea feeding another, and one system in the game or one technology in the game or one piece of artwork feeding another. It's all interconnected, and I just have endless praise for the team in Lyon that does the bulk of the work on things like this. You know, those guys are so talented.
Cool. Well, I'm sure that you all were working on or starting to think about this as you were completing Dishonored 2. Are there things, if we go back and play through Dishonored 2, that we might find hinting at
Yeah, I think you should play all the games, because I'm not just saying that, but like, I'm such a nerd for the way we work. There are layers and layers through the entire thing. Like, if you play Dishonored 1, and you see that all from Corvo's perspective, Dowd coming and killing Jessamine, and near the end of Dishonored 1, you have the choice to spare Dowd or not, and we decided it's canon that for whatever reason, Corvo spares the assassin that killed the woman that he loved. And then you move forward, you play Knife of Dunwall and Brigmore Witches, you see it from Dowd's perspective. Billy Lurk is there on the scene, they killed Jessamine. There's great regret in Dowd after that, and it works all the way up to the moment where Corvo faces him. Then you play Dishonored 2 from Emily's perspective about the death of her mother and her relationship with Corvo, her father, how she would feel about Dowd. And she's living and traveling with Megan Foster this whole time. She doesn't know that this is a woman who participated in the assassination of her mother. All those things are connected. And then you get to play Billy. We've had the idea for a very long time that we wanted to lead one of the games with Billy Lurk. She's one of our favorite characters. She's very strong. She's very deep. She's layered. She's voiced by Rosario Dawson.
Top talent.
Very, very talented actor. And so, you know, this is like a dream come true for us to be able to lead with Billy Lurk, new set of powers. If you play through once as Billy Lurk, she has her signature set of powers and gadgets. You can then play through again with what we call OG Plus, Original Game Plus. And we've chosen 3 of Corvo and Emily's powers from before that we then swap in, so you can replay Death of the Outsider with those 3 powers that we've chosen.
That's great.
From the earlier games.
Tons of replay value. We're just about out of time, but when does Death of the Outsider hit?
It's $29.99. It's a standalone adventure. It's a little shorter than a full release, and September 15th it's out.
So not long to wait.
Yeah, not long.
Harvey, thank you so much for coming by. We're going to talk to you a little bit more tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Right? And that's going to be a fun chat. Zach, you'll be back with us
I will indeed.
for that one. So
all right,
stay tuned for PlayStation Live from E3. We've got a lot more coming up.
PlayStation